Taylor Swift is at the top of it, Benson Boone is at the top of it, Sabrina Carpenter doing very well. We could end up, if we're not careful, in a world where human created music has no value.
Welcome to The Big Question, the series from Euronews where we dive deep into the world of business. Today I'm joined by Victoria Oakley, the CEO of IFPI, the global industry body for record labels. Thank you very much for joining me today. So just to get us started, can you just explain for those in the audience who might not know, how does the music industry work and what is the role of a record label?
It's a bit of a higgledy-piggledy structure, I won't pretend otherwise. So touring and live and concerts are huge, right? Then streaming, where you perhaps do an awful lot of your listening. There is publishing, there is songwriting, there is music for film, there's music for adverts, there is merchandising, there's all, this whole ecosystem of different ways in which artists both reach their fans and make money and can thrive as artists. The record labels that we represent as the trade body for the recording industry are the companies and the groups of record labels that take on artists, they find them, they sign them, they represent them, they act as rights holders for them, and they help them to ensure that their music reaches audiences.
You at IFPI published your global music report. Can you tell me some of the key takeaways? What are you seeing in this report?
It's really interesting because you would think that we would know exactly what was going to be in it because we're watching the music industry as it evolves every year. But humans are interesting people, right? And we listen to different things at different times and we make choices and something catches fire and something doesn't. And what we're seeing in 2024 is continued growth in the music industry, which is great news. We're seeing that there are some very fast-growing regions where revenue from recorded music is up, and that's in Africa, in the Middle East and in Latin America, all growing really, really healthily. And we are seeing some slowing of the overall growth rate, but frankly still in ways that many, many other sectors would be incredibly envious of, I have to say. What's particularly interesting, I think, is in Europe, which had not necessarily been hugely successful, hadn't had very powerful growth rates for the last handful of years, but has really come back and is somewhat bucking the broader trend and showing a growth rate between 8 and 9%.
Why do you think that is?
We've seen a number of things in Europe. One is around their own artists. So what's really interesting about most European countries is they consume their own music, often in their own language, more than almost anything else.
Okay.
So yes, major global artists do very well in European countries, of course they do. They are all expressing a clear preference in sales terms for their own artists in their own language.
Looking at the music market in Europe specifically, what are the key revenue drivers here?
We've seen an increase in streaming, so in the number of subscribers taking up streaming, which means more people listening to more music more often. And it is the main way in which people are listening to music, which isn't true everywhere in the world. We've certainly got some markets, for example, Japan, where physical purchases still play a huge role.
CDs?
CDs in a big way. We should talk about vinyl though, because that's interesting. I don't know if I would say vinyl is back and that's the future and we're all going to stop listening using platforms and start listening with record players instead. But people are buying a lot of vinyls. You've got parts of the world where they always have, certainly in Asia. So in South Korea it's absolutely huge. And actually in other parts of the world where they're listening to K-pop in particular from South Korea, they often buy it first on vinyl. What you also have is a lot of what we would call super fans buying vinyl as a collector's item.
Yes.
And they will buy multiple different versions. And it's really important to fans who want to have that kind of really strong personal connectivity with their artist.
And would you say there's any particular genres that are, driving the industry at the moment?
You can look at the top 10 anywhere in the world and you can see that the top 10 are essentially some of these very well-known names. Taylor Swift is at the top of it, Benson Boone is at the top of it, Sabrina Carpenter doing very well, Teddy Swims doing very well. What's interesting though is it does vary country by country. In fact, in Italy, the top 10 albums sold across the year in 2024 were all by Italian artists and sung in Italian. So there is no single answer to what's doing well because what's driving growth in Italy is completely different to what's driving it in China. And isn't that the great joy of the music business?
Yep.
That there's something for everyone, and that something you love, I hate, but we can both have access to it.
Do you think that Europe poses a particular challenge for artists, being such a diverse linguistic landscape, for artists to expand beyond their domestic territory?
About 15 to 20 plus years ago, you had to sing in English to really make it to the top, right?
Yeah.
And so music from America, Britain, Canada did incredibly well in most places. That is just not the case anymore, anywhere in the world. Although I shared the Italy statistic with you, a statistic close to that is true of nearly every European country. Although a lot of people still listen to music in English, there's great joy in listening to music in your own language. It's a celebration of your culture, and you probably feel very deeply connected to it when it's an artist from your town, your country, your village singing in your language. The challenge then is around export. I mean, who'd have thought 10 years ago that every teenager all over the world would be listening to K-pop? They have managed to absolutely export their music, often in their own language. It's become a real phenomenon. And so if South Korea can do it, there's no reason that nobody else can't.
A big conversation that's happening in every industry in the world is AI and the role of AI going forward. So what is the stance from record labels on AI usage in music, and what are the concerns?
So you said AI, and I'm going to say it depends if you're talking about AI or generative AI.
Okay.
And the distinction is really important. When it comes to generative AI, I think it's trickier. There's a really fundamental principle, which is that if there is a Gen AI model or a large language model that needs to be trained on vast quantities of high quality material in order to create an output, and it needs to do that with authorization. So quite frankly, basic copyright rules, which we have all around the world, need to be applied in a Gen AI world. And the risk here is that if we don't get that right, we could end up, if we're not careful, in a world where human created music has no value. Because if you can just make this slightly rubbish music for free, or as good as, and churn it out, then why would people, either from a business perspective as investors, or indeed as artists, get into the music market? I don't want to live in a world where 20 years from now, you can't go and see a live concert of a human artist because it's not possible for them to make money as musicians and artists. I think the other risk, possibly, if you move to a world where Gen AI becomes the main producer of music, is it narrows, right? And so what happens to all those interesting genres that, you know, maybe a smaller number of people listen to? What happens to folk music? What happens to bagpipe music? What happens to, I mean, maybe there's not a huge audience for these things, but I think the great joy of this democratization of music that we've seen recently is that there is something for everyone, that you can access these types of music, that there is a home for it. And I really don't want to live in a world where that's narrowed and the genres that are perhaps less successful get abandoned.
Well, on that note, that's all we've got time for, but thank you so much for your insights today, and thank you for joining me on The Big Question.
Thanks for having me.